Hello learners and welcome to Natural Sciences lesson. So today we're going to be dealing with density, mass and volume. So before we start, did you know that oil doesn't mix with water because the two liquids have different densities? So in this lesson we're going to be exploring density and densities of different materials. So to begin with, we need to be able to set our goals and target for this lesson so that we can be able to go back and review and check if whether we have achieved what we wanted to achieve. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to define density. You also need to be able to use the formula to calculate density of given blocks. The formula given would be density is equals to mass over volume. And also by the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand the relationship between density, mass and volume using the very same equation of density is equals to mass over volume. And then lastly, you need to be able to use the particle model to explain why different solids, liquids and gases have different densities for a fixed volume. So then, in order for us to be able to achieve our targets, we need to break those goals into small concepts that we can be able to tackle bit by bit until we achieve what we set to achieve. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the density, mass and volume, and then after we're going to be looking at density and the states of matter, and then lastly we're going to be looking at the density of different materials. So our big idea, our main idea is to be looking at the density, the mass and the volume. So we're going to start there and move right along with our concept map up until the last bit. So then, throughout this lesson, we are going to be using certain things that some might be familiar to you and some may not be familiar to you. For instance, by this lesson or by this time, you should be able to, you should already know the following, that matter is everywhere and everything is made of matter. So everything that is around us that we can be able to see, those things are made up of matter. And then we also know that matter is anything that takes up space and has mass. So anything that takes up space and has mass is matter. So we also need to know that the particles that are making up the matter, they are always in a constant motion. So everything around us is made up of matter, and everything that is taking up space and has mass is also matter. And then the particles that are making up the matter, they are always in a constant motion. So then, we also know that matter can be found in three different types. These three different types are considered the three states of matter. So what are those states of matter? We have solids, we have liquids, and then we have gases. So the matter can be found in these three states, the solids, the liquids, and the gases. So with what we know, let's see if we can be able to answer the following question. So this question is in two parts. The first part is we need to be able to write down the three states of matter. The question says, what are the three states of matter called? And then the second part of the question is asking us to draw diagrams to represent each state of matter. So firstly, what are the three states of matter called? We have solids, we have liquids, and we have gases. Now, the second part where we're supposed to draw, we're going to use blocks to draw our states of matter. So now, the solids, we know that solids are closely packed together with little to no spaces in between the particles. So we are going to have our solid particles that are closely packed together in a rigid state. And we know that the solid particles, they vibrate, their movement is they vibrate around a point. So they are not moving, they just simply vibrate. And then now, so our solid particle is a rigid particle or rigid particles that are vibrating and they have little spaces between the particles. And then now with regards to the liquid, we know that those ones, they take up the space of they take up the shape of the container that they are in, and they are able to move around chaotically. And this, in fact, the spaces, to show the difference in spaces, the spaces of the particles, it is there, and they take up the shape of the container. So there are spaces slightly bigger than the spaces in a solid when you're talking about a liquid particle. Then with regards to the gas particles, we know that the spaces in between the particles is much larger, so therefore the gas particles are able to fill up whichever container that they are in. They have large spaces in between the particles, and they're able to go and fill up the entire space in which they are in. Right. So we have our solid particles, our liquid, and our gas particles in a certain container, and we have shown the differences in terms of the diagrams to illustrate the differences of the three states of matter. So throughout this entire lesson, we're going to be using words such as mass, volume, density, physical quantity, immiscible liquids, so that we can be able to better explain what we're talking about when we're referring to density, mass, and volume. So before we start with our first concept, we're just going to quickly take an ad break, and I'll see you just after this.